Welcome to the Guaranteed Growth Podcast. Let's grow together.
Don't think that you could actually get cheap influence. You can't buy cheap influence. So that means if you want depth of influence, you're going to have to depth of preparation. You have to ask yourself, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? Well, the employee thinks, if I don't do this job right, what he's thinking is about his own personal results. I could get fired. He's not thinking about the client. He's not thinking about the business. He's not thinking about the big picture. He's thinking about himself. When we're taking on the ownership mentality, we're saying, what if you don't do this properly? Well, someone's spiritual development is at stake. Someone's leadership potential is at stake. Someone's personal momentary breakthrough is at stake. You're only going to speak from a level of superficiality, and this is what's going to happen. Your people will all be superficial. So there's a lot at stake if you don't do this properly, or I don't do this properly. Our product is people. We're going to develop people just like us. Now, understand, when you're preparing, you're humble. When you're preparing, you're being responsible. When you're preparing, you're being loving. When you're preparing, you're being careful instead of careless. Careful with the people instead of careless with the people. When you're preparing, you're dependent on the Holy Spirit. And you think, well, no, I'll be dependent on myself. No, you're preparing and you're looking for download from the Holy Spirit. That's what prayer time is. You know how many pastors I've seen, they don't prepare a message and then they say they're dependent on the Holy Spirit. You're not dependent on the Holy Spirit. You're dependent on your gifting. And that's why when you're speaking, no one understands what you're saying, because it's a salad of ideas chopped up in all kinds of pieces, and no one even knows what you're talking about. Where's the outline? I don't have an outline. You don't have an outline because you've not prepared. Well, I just depend on the Holy Spirit. No, you don't. You're not dependent on the Holy Spirit. You're being lazy, and your church won't grow. Your ministry won't grow, and you're going to develop a whole bunch of scatterbrain followers because you're teaching with scattered brain ideas. No clear vision. We don't even know where you're headed. And then you want your people to be thinking straight, follow you. They don't even know where you're going anyway. They can't even figure out where you're going in a sermon, much less where you're going as a minister. So now I'm preparing, but I've been preparing since I woke up this morning. So some of the stuff that I'm teaching you right now, some of it I got through listening to a book on tape that I woke up early this morning. Some of it, it's just dependent on the Holy Spirit. And because I spend time in the flow, I could flow out of a place I've put myself into in preparation time. Your public ministry is only an overflow of the river you're in. You don't get into that river, you can't flow like I'm flowing right now. I don't have notes in front of me, but I'm flowing in a spirit of preparation. The Holy Spirit bringing up what he wants to bring up. I didn't plan necessarily to talk about preparation, but my preparation prepared me to talk about preparation. See, if you don't prepare, you've never talked about preparation. You've never talked about it because it's not an agenda for you. Some of you have never, ever, your whole life, talked about preparation. And I'll tell you why. You're so used to flying to the seat of your pants because you're so gifted that you're not crossing your T's, you're not dotting your I's, and we have to go back and clean up after you because you didn't think it out enough. You didn't prepare enough. And the problem is when you don't prepare, you lose keenness. You lose keenness. That means you become blinded to flaws. You become blindness to your own carelessness. You don't even see it. And the worst thing as a leader is becoming blind to areas that need to be improved in your ministry or yourself. Because that, you know what that happens? You lose conviction. Yep. Then that carelessness flows into everything you do. It flows in, someone texts you, you don't text them back. Someone calls you, you ignore their calls, you don't call them back. You say you're going to do something, you don't do it. Because the carelessness is just, you're a careless person. That's all it is. But you don't even realize how careless you are. You start thinking, you put the burden on the people instead of burden on yourself. But they really want to get in contact with me, they'll keep contacting you. That's not being a servant leader. That's being careless in your leadership. What's going to happen is going to overflow into your bills, the way you do your bills. It's going to overflow into your habits. It's going to overflow into your conversation with your family. It's going to overflow into every area, because you cannot be careless in one area and be astute, responsible in all the areas. Responsibility overflows into other areas. Irresponsibility becomes part of your character.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to share and subscribe.